Hello there, and welcome to the Pivot Africa webinar on the art of self-leadership. My name is Oluwatotan, and it's a pleasure to connect with you. So we're going to look at this. We are going to talk about the art of self-leadership, and this is quite an important topic considering the fact that we have only just started a new year, and we all have our hopes and aspirations. There actually is an anonymous saying that the last day, someone once told me the definition of hell, the last day you have on earth, the person you became will meet the person you could have become. For every forward thinking and progressive minded person, the aim should be that the person that we become and the person that we could have become are not different. In other words, they are the one same person. So you want to be someone who has those two entities as one entity, the person you could have become and the person you become. It shouldn't be two different people, because measuring the difference or the distance between those two entities would be the the value or the extent of failure, so to say. Self-leadership is an art, and because it's an art, that means it can be learned. So how exactly can we make ourselves ready to lead ourselves? First of all, we should understand that the aim of self-leadership is self-transformation. The tendency is not for things to get better with time. The tendency is for things to lose value, to degenerate, to undergo a downward slide with time. So I have said that self-leadership is important because while growing old is a function of time, growing up is not. While surviving is a function of time, thriving is not. While getting by is mostly a function of time, making an impact is not. So if you leave everything to time and chance, chances are we won't get to the point we need to get to. So there's got to be a level of intentional action in trying to accomplish the very purpose for which we are created on this earth. And self-leadership, as it sounds, is basically leading yourself. It's very easy to think about leading others and being the head of an organization or of a team. But what I have discovered is that the most important person you will ever lead is yourself. And I should also say that many times the most difficult person to lead is actually yourself. And again, because it is an art, it can be learned, and it makes sense to learn the art of self-leadership. Now, what I've discovered is that most people in the world are stuck in their ways. People are stuck in a repetitive pattern of what I've called non-progressive behaviors, attitudes, and thinking. And for the most part, they do not know how to break free from those limiting patterns. Most of us have limiting patterns. And the first thing we need to do in order to lead ourselves effectively is to recognize our limiting patterns. So I'm going to be asking a few questions in the course of this webinar. And the first question is, what are your most dominant limiting patterns? What are those things that have made you to be almost the same person you are now as you were, to be almost the same person today as you were about a year ago? What are those patterns, those attitudinal patterns, those behaviors, those habits that would limit you in such a way that in another 1 year there might not really be a lot of progress in your life? It could be something as silly as excessive social media use, for example. And sometimes there are things that you might want to excuse away and say, well, it's just a part of life. It's just how I am, or it's just what everybody does. You see, what makes the difference between the person who really gets ahead and makes the most of their opportunities and effectively lead themselves, and the person who does not, is the ability to be teachable enough to recognize that there is a limiting pattern and that they need to do something about it. So I want you to think about that. What are your most dominant limiting patterns? Now, under self-leadership, there are certain themes we need to talk about. The first is the theme of purpose and self-discovery. So it's a very important theme of self-leadership. The second is the theme of daily contributions, or what I've called the law of daily contributions. And the third is gem life. And I'm just going to touch on each of these for a very brief period of time. Because of time, this is a short webinar. I'm not going to explore any of this in detail, but I'm just going to give you enough to do something with in order to begin to lead yourself effectively. So let's talk about purpose and self-discovery. You cannot lead yourself effectively if you don't know what makes you different, if you don't know what the best chance you have at being a different person. And identity is quite important, because it's very important to state that many times people these days just allow the bandwagon effect to be the determinant of their actions. So everybody believes that, okay, this is what you need to do: go to school, get a good grade. Once you graduate, get a good job, and then get to the top of the corporate ladder. That's like the predominant thinking in the minds of most young people. But when you understand your identity, first of all, you realize that not every destination is your destination. Every bus stop does not look attractive to you. You don't have to do things because everybody else feels those things are the right things to do. You know what makes you different. You are able to identify those things. And I should say that in line with identity, your no's are almost more important than your yeses. The opportunities and the things you say, no, I'm not going to, the opportunities and the things you say no to are almost as important as the things you say yes to. So it's not important for everybody to go for a master's immediately after getting a bachelor's degree. Most people do that. There's nothing wrong with it. But is that really the path that aligns the most with your purpose in life? Because if you're going to give yourself the best chance of success in any given field, you need to know what makes you different. So it's about having a niche for yourself and knowing what that niche is, getting to know your tribe and getting to know the things that you have to leave behind, because that simplicity is what gives you the opportunity of ultimate advancement. So purpose and self-discovery are such important aspects of self-leadership. The next part of self-leadership is the law of daily contributions. If you cannot live one day successfully and duplicate it, you will never be successful in life. So once we have discovered what the point of difference is for us, we then have to get ourselves into that space where we are daily contributing towards the actualization of our vision or our goals in life. So this is the law of daily contributions. That success is not achieved in miles, but in inches. So the second question I'm going to ask you is, how do you define success at the end of every day? Because remember, if you cannot live a day successfully and duplicate it, you will never be successful in life. At least you will most likely not do better than just getting by in life. So if you want to do better than getting by in life, you have to be able to define what success is like for you. How do you define success at the end of every day? Let me make that clearer by asking a third question. Apart from waking up, eating, going to work or school, and sleeping, do you have a daily practice that improves your proficiency in a specific area? Is there something that you are contributing to on a daily basis in order to become great in a certain area? This is how the people who do extraordinarily well in sports invest themselves. And that's exactly how anybody else would have to behave or act in order to give themselves the best chance of success. The third theme of self-leadership is what I've called Gem Life. And Gem Life is a mental model that I developed a couple of years ago, mostly for the purpose of achieving balance. And there are different areas of life. I've identified 8 in this place where you need to invest yourself consistently. So Gem Life stands for God, exercise, recreation, money, leadership, inspiration, fellowship, and expression. Because of time, I'm not going to each of these, but the idea is for you to become a well-rounded person who does well at work and also does well with the family, who does well with their health and also does well with money, who does well with personal development and also does well with impacting your community. You need to have a model that places a demand on you to make the most of the opportunities in these various areas. And that's why I developed Gem Life as a model for planning and personal development. Again, because of time, I'm not going to explore this in detail. Now let's look at certain guiding concepts of self-leadership. The first that I discovered was developed by Stephen Covey. And I think this is something that is useful for our day-to-day activities. It's called Covey's Circles, and it's about knowing where to concentrate your efforts in order to make the most of your day, in order to make the most not just of your day, but of your life, and to give yourself a chance at having a life that is not encumbered by unnecessary distractions and emotions. So in Covey's Circles, first of all, Covey explained that there are certain things that fall within your circle of control. There are other things that fall within your circle of influence, and then there are certain things that fall within your circle of concern. It is wise to be able to differentiate these various things so that you do not spend time in the wrong areas of life. There's a prayer called the Serenity Prayer, and it says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So this really speaks to wisdom and intelligence. So what are the things that are within your circle of control? Let's start from there. These are things that you can do something about. They are well within the framework of your intentional action. You can make a move to make a difference for yourself in those areas. So let's look at some examples. Your thoughts are within your circle of control. Your words, your actions and behavior, your reactions to other people's actions are within your circle of control. Your decisions, your attitudes, your work ethic, all of those are within your circle of control. So what this means is you can decide what you do in those areas. There are certain things that are not within your circle of control, but are within your circle of influence. So, for example, you can influence other people's choices. If you're a bit persuasive, or if you're able to negotiate, you can influence other people's commitments. For example, if you tell them why they need to be committed, they are within your circle of influence, but not within your circle of control. You can influence whether you get promoted at work by putting in your best. Putting in your best does not necessarily mean you'll get promoted, but it gives you a chance because that's a circle of influence. But there are certain things that are totally out of your circle of control and your circle of influence. These are under your circle of concern. So things like the weather, sport, like a sports match, how much whether the stock price goes up or down, or a particular company's stock price, all of those are within your circle of concern. You are concerned about them, but apart from being concerned, there's absolutely nothing you can do about them. Traffic in a city like Lagos, for example, although this has improved over the past few months, but for the most part, you cannot influence traffic. So what happens really is that people who give themselves a low chance of mental stability are people who spend a lot of time, who burn a lot of brain matter, worrying about things that are within their circle of concern. But they don't spend that amount of time on commitments or on committing to things that are within their circle of control. They blame other people for things they can control, and they are worried about things they cannot control. So that's something you have to switch up. You have to understand that when something is within your circle of control, you've got to do something about it. But if it's within your circle of concern, there's no point getting unnecessarily anxious or worried about it. I actually had to apply this to myself some years ago. I realized that it is foolish of me to always get re-surprised or re-agitated by things that have a definite pattern of repetition. So for example, I live in Nigeria. It is normal, it is expected that electricity would be interrupted. It has been like that for ages. Why should I get angry and get agitated every time it happens? So the problem now is not with the electricity suppliers, because we already know that that is the way things are, and it's not even about them. It's about a whole lot of factors. But the point is, every time there's an outage of power, my mood does not have to take a dip because I already know that should happen. I should expect that. If you walk around or if you work with somebody who has a certain attitude, this person is maybe not so nice or rude, or somebody is bossy, you already know this is that person's behavior. If you get yourself triggered, or if you get triggered every time the person acts in a way that is understandably inappropriate, you'd realize that something is wrong with you as well, because we already know that this person has established a pattern, a behavioral pattern. You owe it to yourself not to get re-agitated or quote unquote re-surprised by something that already has a definite pattern of repetition. So this is like what I call an index of maturity. Why is this important in self-leadership? If you spend your time in your circle of concern and spend less time in your circle of control, you're not going to make a success of your day. You'll be frustrated and anxious most of the day. And remember that success is achieved not in miles, but in inches. Also remember that if you cannot live one day successfully and duplicate it, you will not be successful in life. So you're going to make a failure. You're going to make a mess and a failure out of so many days. And cumulatively, you realize that you're not really making a lot of progress. This is why you have to control your emotions and your triggers in the course of your day by understanding COVID circles. This is why I've included this amongst the themes of self-leadership. Another important theme is what I call catalytic attitudes. They are attitudes that compel progress. And I found that these attitudes, which ironically are very, very rare, and they are self-awareness and teachability. And I'm going to ask you a question. Another question. This is not in my slide, but it's a question I want you to ponder on. When was the last time you made a change in your life based on a new information you got about something? When was the last time you got to a point where you read something or you heard something and it touched you, and on account of that thing that you read or heard or learned, you took an intentional step to make a specific change in a certain area? It could be something as simple as, oh, maybe the way you've been brushing your teeth is wrong. For example, I learned sometime in 2019 that after you've brushed your teeth, you're not supposed to wash out. Like the toothpaste, the toothpaste you use expectedly should contain fluoride. Fluoride has a positive effect on your teeth. Washing it out immediately after brushing reduces the time it has to act on your teeth. So you're not supposed to use water after brushing your teeth. You're supposed to spit out, quite all right, but you're not supposed to rinse out. I learned that actually. I was just reading the news, and I just read this article, and I was like, oh, it makes sense. And I tell you that was the last time I ever rinsed out. Making changes based on new information. If you cannot identify or think about or call back to mind any time in the recent past when you made a change based on new information, you are in all likelihood not a self-aware and teachable person. The reason why self-awareness and teachability are catalytic attitudes is that they engender adaptability. People who are self-aware and teachable are always adaptable. When things change, adaptable people are able to make the most of those changes. But people who are not adaptable feel victimized. One thing that's constant in this world is change. So adaptability makes you make the most of change. It gives you the opportunity to make the most of change. So I'm going to play a video right now. And it's just a video I'd like us to watch. It also speaks to the ability to be well situated and make a choice based on the things that are within your circle of control. So just take a listen and watch.
One question that conscious leaders ask themselves over and over is, where am I? To support leaders in locating themselves as they ask the question, where am I? We offer this tool, a line, a simple black line. At any moment, all leaders and all people are either above the line or below the line. Our location describes how we're being with what is occurring in our life right now. If we're above the line, we are open, curious, and committed to learning. If we are below the line, we are closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Stop right now and simply ask yourself, where am I? In this now moment, am I above the line or below the line? Typically, when people are below the line, they believe certain things about the world. For example, they believe there is not enough. It could be that there's not enough money, or time, or space, or energy or love. People below the line also believe that their story about the situation is right. People below the line also believe that there is a threat out there. Something or someone is threatening their desire for approval, control, or security. And people below the line see the situation as serious. The deeper below the line they are, the more serious things look. People below the line tend to behave certain ways as well. They tend to cling to an opinion, find fault and blame, gossip, explain, rationalize and justify, get overwhelmed, and avoid conflict or pursue conflict for the sake of winning. When people are above the line, they believe that learning and growing are more important than being right. They believe that all people and circumstances are their allies, here for their growth. They believe that from a distance, almost everything is funny. People above the line live in curiosity, listen deeply, speak unarguably, question all their beliefs, and live a life of play. Now, knowing what you know about being above or below the line, where are you? One thing to know as you consider this question: we are hardwired to go below the line. Literally, our brain is programmed to perceive threat, and when it does, a chemical cocktail courses through our veins, and we go below the line. This reaction was designed to help us survive in the presence of a real threat to our physical survival. An issue for modern-day leaders is that often our brains can't tell the difference between a threat to our physical survival and a threat to our ego or identity. We react and get defensive when we experience a threat to our ego. So in many ways, being below the line is natural and normal. But when we are below the line, we're not in a state, literally brain state, of high creativity, collaboration, innovation, and relational connection. We're simply trying to survive. Leaders today can't thrive if they're in survival mode. So the first activity of conscious leadership is location, location, location. In this now moment, where am I? Telling ourselves and others the truth about our current location begins the great conversation. Animation by Graham Franks, www.grahamfranks.com.
So the last thing I'm going to talk about is spiritual intelligence. Intelligence quotient is an index of smartness. Emotional intelligence is an index of relatability. Before now, there have been a lot of focus on intelligence quotient. More recently, the attention shifted to emotional intelligence, which basically makes us to understand that it's not enough to be brilliant and smart. You need to be able to connect with people. But there's one other index that eludes many people today, and I call it an index of meaning. Because sometimes you have the intelligence quotient, a high IQ, you have a good EQ, but you really don't have meaning. You don't have a sense of meaning. And I mean, there's an unanimous agreement about the fact that meaning is a foundation of advancement, even in organizations. But even apart from talking about meaning in the context of organizations, I'm talking about meaning in a personal sense. People don't know the answer to the question is, what's the point of everything? What's the point of we all live, and then no matter how successful we become, no matter how much money we make, no matter what happens, we all get to die and leave everything at the end of the day, and makes people question what the point of everything is. And this is why I feel spiritual intelligence is important. You need to find a way to make sense of the meaning for yourself. You need to find a way to answer that question. What's the point of everything? And the only way I know to do that is by having spiritual intelligence. Personally, I'm a Christian, and it makes sense to me that living my life is not all about me. I'm here for a purpose, and I didn't decide that purpose. The one who created me decided it, and I'm accountable to him. So I'm not just here, and I'm not just going to die out like a flame and without any meaning, like, the way many people think it is. So there's just got to be a way to find out what that is. And that is what I mean by spiritual intelligence. It's something we need to pay attention to, because no matter how much advancement you experience in life, if you cannot really define what the point is of everything, then it's almost meaningless. Someone once talked about the fact that before, a doctor, he spoke about the fact that in trying to get people to even live their best life and have good health outcomes, you need to even start by asking the question, do you really think that you're enjoying your life? Like, if you think your life sucks, there's no point preaching about longevity. And there are many people who actually think their life sucks, and it's not because they don't have money, it's just because they don't have meaning. So in this new year, as you strive to achieve a lot of things for yourself, also make it a point of duty to come to terms with meaning for yourself. And the only way to do that is by having a good level of spiritual intelligence. So that's where I'm going to stop in talking about the art of self-leadership. And I want to thank you for listening and participating in this webinar. I hope to see you in the upcoming Leadership, Culture, and Strategy series of webinars organized by Pivot Africa in conjunction with Thoughts in Motion. Thank you once again for connecting. Talk to you again soon.